Hey everyone, I'm Shaun Holkko. I went to Sac State from 2016 to 2020, and I was a part of KSSU from the spring 2018 semester through the end of my tenure at Sac State.
Came to a screeching halt with COVID because my last semester, I spent my last 8 weeks online. And so when I did my last KSSU show, I didn't realize it was going to be my last show. And then suddenly it was.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it was for, a lot of our alumni, and I'm happy that you're here today.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be here. I appreciate you running this series and reaching out to me. And this is really cool too, because I feel like I never really got closure from like the end of my tenure at Sac State. Like I did the commencement ceremony in 2021 where we literally were driving our cars throughout the campus and doing a little graduation ceremony. But in regard to KSSU, like I feel like I never really got that true closure. So this is an awesome experience, and I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always good to be back. And tell us a bit more about like what your role at the station was when you were a student, or what was your show like, if you remember the name of it and all of that.
Yeah, so when I first started on KSSU, I did a sports show with my friend Keith Joganatis, and we called it TBD, which stood for To Be Debated. And so we did that for 2 semesters, and then Keith stepped away from the radio station to pursue other opportunities. And so I continued on, and I did my own sports show. And so I was hosting it solo every single Wednesday at 12, and it was called the Shaun Holkko Show, like pretty easy to remember that. And then also I did a lot with for the volunteer hours. I'm sure you guys still have volunteer hours here. And so for all of my volunteer hours, I always did it around the sporting events, because I've always been extremely passionate about sports throughout my life. And so I got to do play-by-play, color commentary for Sac State football and basketball. And that was long before Sac State football and basketball is what it is today. And so it was great opportunities. I remember being in this studio for so many hours, whether if it was producing the game day broadcast, hosting the in-studio show, or being the analyst in the in-studio. And so I spent a lot of hours here at KSSU. And the fun fact about my time at KSSU is that when I first started, the studio was still in the well, where I believe that it's like right when you walk into the right. I went to the well earlier for the first time in like 6 years. And so I can't remember off the top of my head what's there now when you first walk into the right. It's like, I think it's like an event center or something like that. But that's where the KSSU studio was while they were building this here in the Union, when they did a whole Union expansion halfway through my time at Sac State. And so between being in the well to now here in the Union, I spent so much time in the KSSU studio.
Yeah, I heard about it being in the well, and I was not here during that, but that's super interesting to think about. And I'm thinking like if I worked here while it was at the well, it would be more of a walk
Yeah.
with like classes and in between. But that's super cool. I wonder if there's like any pictures of it still. Maybe if I find it, maybe I'll post some of that.
Yeah, and I could honestly probably scroll back on my own phone right now and find some.
Yeah.
Because my camera roll dates back to 2015, so like right before I got into college. And so yeah, I believe it was my first 2 semesters on KSSU was when the studio was still in the well. I think my very first semester, they had the idea to bring it here into the Union, and like they totally revamped the whole Union. Like the game center wasn't here. The whole like backside of the Union wasn't here. There's still the Starbucks in the back corner, I think. And so the Union changed so much. And my favorite part about it, the gaming room is really cool. But my favorite part was the fact that KSSU was more centrally located, as you were alluding to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember I did see like the construction photos of when they were revamping that. So that makes sense. And then you mentioned how you did you talked sports on your show, and I know you said that it looked very different. Like, how does that feel now, or are you keeping up with the sports at Sacramento State?
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? It's probably changed.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I'm a little envious and jealous because I was on KSSU for 5 semesters, excuse me, in 2.5 years, but I was also on the State Hornet, the student newspaper, for 3 years and 6 semesters. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I entrenched myself in all things Sac State sports, and I covered the women's basketball team as a beat for a couple of years, and one of the seasons they were 3-27, so it was really bad records. And then after I graduated, Mark Campbell came to Sac State and he led them to the NCAA tournament for the very first time. Obviously, the Sac State football team has absolutely blown up, now joining the MAC, going to be true Division I FBS. It was an accomplishment. It was a huge accomplishment when Sac State even made the FCS playoffs for the first time during my senior year in 2019. And I'm not taking anything away from those teams because it was great memories, but Sac State football is just on a whole new level now. The baseball team was the perennial success during my time, and Reggie Christensen is still around, still leading the Hornets to so much success. But with the basketball programs, I mean, Mike Bibby was my favorite NBA player growing up.
Yeah.
And so to see him come back to Sacramento and to be leading this Hornets team, even I believe his name is Andy Koloff, who's the women's basketball coach. He took over for Mark Campbell and he had really big shoes to fill, and he's done a good job. Like I saw Sac State made it pretty far in the Big Sky tournament and almost made it back to the NCAA tournament. And so, to be honest with you, things have changed so much, and I'm proud to be an alumnus, but also like I'm a little envious because it would have been really cool to be broadcasting those games at the level that football and basketball is at now, or writing about it for the student newspaper and covering it in all those capacities. So I'm really proud to be an alumnus, but it's a little bit like, dang, like I wish I got to cover that.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of funny because we're trying to get more students to be involved with the sports broadcasting part of KSSU. But yeah, this would be a good advertisement for anyone. If they want to help out with sports broadcasting, now is the time, especially with everything happening. And we did, what was it? We worked on, we were like a very small part, KSSU was a small part of the new documentary coming out about the men's basketball. So it's just a great opportunity for all our volunteers, an amazing thing to have on their resume.
Yeah,
Sure.
most definitely. Like Sac State sports in general are on the rise, and as you were saying, like this is the time to take advantage of it. Like if you're a student, and like I've always been like obsessed with sports, love sports, and so when I came to Sac State, like I could count how many parties I went to on probably both my hands because I spent so much time doing KSSU and the student newspaper that like when all my friends were tailgating before the football games, like I was in the media box, like preparing to cover the game and on the field. And that was before Sac State sports are what they are right now. And so as I was saying, like I'm a sports nut, but even if you just like sports and you're trying to get your volunteer hours in and have it be easy and fun, like it's the best way to do it. I did volunteer hours doing a couple other activities from time to time, like if the sporting events just didn't shake out on the calendar right to get those hours in a month, and that was never as fun as any time I was involved in volunteering doing sports. And that was before Sac State sports are what they are now. So I would say to any KSSU radio DJs, anyone involved with this program, if you like sports at all, you should be involved in the sports broadcast because it's the most fun, easiest way to earn your hours.
Yes, exactly. I agree. And then pivoting to your show again, there's a point where you also play music. So tell me a little bit about like your music taste at the time and what it is now, or like what sort of genres were you playing?
Well, back when I was a KSSU DJ, they actually gave us the option to just do like a straight sports talk show. Yeah, I just did a straight talk show. The only thing that interrupted that during the hours were like all the drops and the PSAs and everything that you're required to play over that hour. And so I basically just did straight sports talk show for an hour. So that's what I did. But regarding your question, I've always been really into hip hop, R&B, pop. I used to hate country, but like modern country has started to grow on me a little bit.
Agree.
Like country over the last 5 years is just completely different with like Jelly Roll, Morgan Wallen, Luke Combs. There are plenty of great country artists now that I actually like because I mean, I could give my opinion about how I used to think country music was, but I'll spare you from that. And so now at this point, like I'm into pretty much all types of music except for maybe like screaming heavy metal where like you can't really understand necessarily what they're saying. And now I feel like I sound super old because like that's what my mom used to say about like some rap music. She's like, I don't understand what they're saying. And I'm like, well, that's how I feel about like screaming heavy metal. But other than that, like I'm into pretty much all types of music now.
Yeah. To each their own.
Exactly. And I don't judge anyone for what they like. It's like you like what you like, and
yeah, it's your own.
Exactly. And for people to like criticize like what others are into, it's like just worry about yourself, worry about your own life. They're not affecting you in any negative way. Like they're enjoying themselves. Go enjoy yourself with what you like. Everyone can enjoy what they want.
Yeah. You know, it's like funny. Sometimes I'll do like I would do interviews outside in the union, and sometimes when I ask people like, oh, like, you know, the trend, like, what song are you listening to? Sometimes people would tell me, oh, I don't listen to music. And I'm like, what?
How?
And I've gotten that answer probably like a good like 3 or 4 times. And as I'm like always surprised, I'm like, is this just a way for them not to talk to me? Or like, I'm like, there's no way you don't listen to music. Like, that's not real.
That's exactly what I was about to ask is like, do you think it's just a cop out of like they don't want to be interviewed or they got to get going or whatever?
I hope so.
Because like what because like what are they listening to if they're not listening to music? Are they just listening to podcasts? Like I don't know.
Like white noise.
I know, right? But isn't even that technically a form of music though?
Yeah, I guess so.
It's like some type of noise. Exactly.
Yeah, be like I listen to ambiance. Anyway, and then going back to like it being like your first time like on the air, like do you remember how it felt or how did it feel when you were first doing your probably your talk show?
Yeah, I was definitely nervous. And luckily I had my friend Keith to kind of lean on, and he had more broadcasting experience than I did. And I learned so much from him, specifically during our time together on KSSU. And I've been hosting podcasts now for 6 years, basically since I left Sac State. And I was doing a podcast as part of the State Hornet while I was still at Sac State. And it was the experience that I got at KSSU that made me comfortable in being a host and doing all the producer behind the scenes stuff, because now I host a podcast that I've been doing for over 3 years about sports with a couple of my friends, Kevin Dent, Javon Toddy. It's called Stats Over Politics. We stream on YouTube and Twitch. Used to stream on Twitter before Elon took it over, and you got to have a blue check mark to be able to stream for free. But I've been able to do that because of the experience I got from KSSU. And but to answer your question, I was so nervous, and I tried to prepare as much as I could. Like Keith, myself, and another friend, we did a Facebook Live show talking about the NFL for a whole season to prep for our show that we were going to do on KSSU. Mm-hmm. And even after all that preparation and practice, when I got in front of the mic and there's the whole soundboard and everything, you got the computer in front of you, it was different. And even after having 2 semesters and a year of experience, I was a lot more nervous when I started doing my radio show here in the Union versus in the Well, because in the Well, you have people walking in to go in there, get their workout in, play basketball, whatever. And they might like glance to their right for a second and see someone through the glass and the on-air light is on. And some people like would take a second and look, and then they would just keep it moving. But you get a lot more eyes on you when you're in the Union. And so while it was really cool to have the studio centrally located and it's much better here, it definitely added to my nerves.
Yeah. I mean, like here, it's kind of like we're like a experiment, like behind the glass, like everyone's looking at us. But it's good for people to see what's happening and that they know that we're here and we're doing this.
Is there still a mic to where like people who are walking by can hear what we're talking about right now?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's a speaker. So
that's awesome. Or yeah, speaker. My bad. We're on the mics. There's the speaker out there.
Yes. But yeah, that's awesome that you have your own podcast now. And like you said that was probably because you were involved so much in similar broadcasting spaces here at Sac State, and then doing KSSU and all of that. And now you carry that into your own life, which is what we hope for everybody. But speaking on like after graduating and all of that, like what is it that you are doing now? Or you can tell us a little bit more about your podcast, or what have you been up to?
Yeah, so when I graduated, it was in May of 2020. As I said earlier, spent my last 8 weeks of college online. But ultimately, in reflection, I'm glad that I only had to spend the last 8 weeks online, because I had friends who spent their entire senior year in 2020, 2021 virtually. And so I was kind of in the position with the rest of the world where everything was kind of at a halt for a while until things started to open up. And so I interned at the Sacramento Bee in the sports department during my senior year of college. And so I continued that till October 2020 when it came to an end. And then I basically spent like 16 months applying for jobs, just trying to get my start in sports journalism or journalism in general, or even radio, some type of broadcasting, because I just wanted to do something with sports media since I was 7 years old. So like, I'm 27 now. So it's been 20 years of trying to chase this dream, and I'm still chasing it. To answer your question, though, I started in February 2022. I worked at the Messenger Publishing Group, where I was working for a newspaper. They have a bunch of community newspapers like the Carmichael Times, the West Sacramento News Ledger, things like that. And I worked there for about a year. And then I got a job in Woodland at the Daily Democrat newspaper out there, and I covered sports for 2 years out there. And then for about a year, I moved to Sonora, which is right outside Yosemite National Park in Tuolumne County. I had never stepped foot in Sonora until basically right before I accepted the position. And I was a sports reporter for the newspaper that they have out there for about a year. And since August of 2025, I've been working for a company called West Coast Preps, and I get to cover the entire Sac Joaquin section of high school sports. And so I get to cover about 150 schools. My coverage area ranges from Merced to Yuba City, so it's a really wide range. Get to cover a lot of schools, but like for example, this past weekend, I spent 13 hours in back-to-back days on Friday and Saturday at Golden One Center covering the basketball state championships. And it was really cool because on Saturday night, like you had the Open Division championships, and you had Archbishop Mitty versus Ontario Christian, and it was the two best girls basketball teams, not only in California but in the country, because they had Kalina Smith versus McKenna. If I try to say her last name, I'm going to butcher it, but it starts with a W. She's going to Iowa to play college basketball, and they're the top two ranked players in the nation, not just in California. And so I got to cover two of the best girls basketball players going up against each other. Kalina's a junior. She's going to be going to some prominent college, probably like UConn or LSU, South Carolina. And then you got McKenna going to Iowa. And so basically I've been covering high school sports now for the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm grateful for the journey, but there's still a lot left more to be done.
Yeah, that's so awesome that you're doing that, and you're doing that in the high school space. I remember high school sports is very competitive, and especially when you have like prospects who are up for, college basketball and things like that. But that's super cool that you're doing that.
Yeah, most definitely. And this past weekend was really cool too, because as I said, I worked in Woodland at the newspaper that they have there, the Daily Democrat, for 2 years. And during that time, I covered 3 high schools that are in the city of Woodland. And it's ironic because when I was working in Woodland, it's a city of 60,000 people. And I thought I was working in a quote unquote small town until I moved to Sonora. Sonora is a town of about 4,000 people. Tuolumne County has about 55,000 people in the entire county. And so I thought I was working in a small town, but then I really went to a small town. But what was kind of full circle this past weekend is when I moved to Sonora, I missed out on the opportunity to cover the Woodland Christian girls basketball team win a state championship last year, which was the first in city history. And they made it back again this year. And now that I was working for West Coast Preps, I got to cover them going back to back as D5 state champions. And so that was really cool. And it was awesome because I was in Sonora watching it on NFHS on my TV last year. And I actually got to be there on the ground covering a team and a program that I got to know really well for a couple years. And so I was really grateful.
Yeah, that's so awesome. What the heck?
Yeah.
Cool. And then to pivot, we're here today because we're celebrating our KSSU 35th anniversary. But how does that feel to you, having 35 years of student radio?
I think it's so awesome because I really tried to maximize my time at Sac State and take advantage of the resources that were here between the radio station and the newspaper. And I tried to just maximize it in terms of getting experience to chase the goals and dreams that I've always had. And so knowing when I enrolled here, like there's so much more stuff that's available here at Sac State than 10 years ago when I enrolled in fall 2016. But the fact that there was already an established student radio station when I came here, I knew I wanted to be a part of it. I spent my freshman year just trying to settle in. And then I ended up joining halfway through my sophomore year. But the fact that KSSU is now at 35 years, because when I was a freshman, it was 25 years. And then during COVID is when the 30th anniversary was. And so I think it's really cool. And I love what the current students like yourself are doing right now, and spotlighting alumni, because you don't have to do that, but it makes us feel special and remembered in history. And as I was telling you before we got on air, like most of this studio is still the same from when I was a student here. Like there's even like a little Daniel Bryan wrestling action figure up there. And like that was here 10 years ago or 9 years ago when I joined. And so it's just really cool. And I'm glad KSSU still seems to be going strong. And thank you for having me here.
Yeah. And the things that, our alumni implement, especially like I was talking to Odin, who used to be staff here. But a lot of them set up like the whole KSSU like ecosystem, and it's like the things that we still do today, or like the certain events or the certain like topics, or like the music, the CDs, the reviews, everything we still use today. And it's just, it's the whole foundation, and you have to give kudos to that and to our alumni. And I'm literally going to be technically alumni in like 3 months.
Congratulations.
When I graduate. So it's important to do that. And, I only hope that I would be interviewed too as well. And we keep it going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This is something.
It's a community.
Exactly. And it's something that I wish my generation did, because there are plenty of notable alumni, but also there are people like myself who may not be very notable, but we're still out trying to chase our careers and goals and everything. And so to have that spotlight and to be Alumni of the Week is just really cool. And my friend Gary Singh, he was a part of KSSU, and I think he got into the management part of KSSU. I think he was also promotions director at one time. And so I was telling him about this, and he was just like, "Oh, that's really cool. Congratulations." And I was like, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Sometimes I feel like I'm not necessarily deserving of this, but it's appreciated. And I just think it's really cool. And as you were saying, people like Odin and everyone before, Andrew Garcia, Quinn Imeson, they were the ones running KSSU when I was around. And it's just really cool to see the past recognized. And as you were saying, you got to start somewhere, and there had to be a foundation. And so the people who started KSSU 35 years ago, they built the foundation that the rest of us have continued to try and build on. And I'm glad to see it still going strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to close, as my last question, you said you work in like sports media and broadcasting, and that's something that you will continue doing. Do you have any advice for students who are interested in that career? Yeah,
the one thing about my experience at Sac State that I wish I learned as a student as it pertains to journalism is I feel like a lot of the professors, and I learned so much from a lot of professors here, that led to me being where I am today. But the one thing that, and as it pertains to journalism specifically with like newspapers and sports writing, is that journalism is tough nowadays. Like newspapers are dying, things are evolving and changing. So there's not as many journalism jobs out there nowadays. And like the entry-level jobs like pay very poorly. Like I worked at In-N-Out for 3 years when I was in college, and like I could go back to In-N-Out right now and make more money than I am right now. So that's the hard truth and reality. And so I feel like it's important to preface what I'm going to say by just talking about the reality for what it is, because I would have rather had someone tell me what I was entering rather than having to face it head on myself. And so I think that's important, but sports media, ultimately at the end of the day, like I watch sports for a living. I cover sports for a living. I get to go to games. And even though I could work it in and out and get paid better, I'm not saying, hi, how are you 50 times in an hour. And like In-N-Out is a really great company to work for. And I'm really grateful for the time that I spent there at the Arden location. But ultimately I get to drive to games, sit there and watch games and write about it, talk about it. And so it's a really cool career. I'm happy to still be doing it. And then as it pertains to media, specifically KSSU, the cool thing about nowadays is anyone can create a YouTube account. Anyone can start a podcast. The technology nowadays is just different. And so if someone wanted to start something, they can start it themselves and they can go for whatever they want to and whatever they dream, because the technology is out there, but it takes time. It takes repetition. A lot of people started, like I've been doing this podcast now for 3.5 years. Before that, I did one for 2 years. And my friend Jay Vaughn and I, we did a podcast called Sean and Vaughn, and then it evolved into Stats Over Politics when we added Gary and we added Kevin. But the thing that a lot of people don't realize when they start podcasts is they think like, oh, it's gonna be simple. Like I'm gonna talk for a little bit and then it's gonna go out there and then I'm gonna blow up and I'm gonna go viral. But it's like, you got to account for all the time it takes for the production side of things, planning beforehand, putting everything that you just did together and then socialing it out so people actually see it and want to listen and engage. And that takes, like Kevin is our social media guy who puts together all the clips that you may see on my page or on our page. And so there's so much more time and energy that goes into it than people realize. And so the overall point is, and I'm sorry I'm rambling, I tend to do that.
You're great.
I appreciate it. But you think it's really simple until you realize when you start it, how much time and energy goes into it. So it's kind of a catch-22 where it's like the resources out there, the technology is out there that anyone can start a podcast or a YouTube show, what have you. But then you got to be committed and you got to do it routinely and regularly. I'd say a minimum of once a month, but more routinely, like we do it every Monday. And then it goes out on the podcast platforms and everything every Tuesday morning. And so you just got to have that consistency, because we've been doing it for 3.5 years, but because we've been doing it at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, depending on how much sports content is out there. Now we're at 185 episodes, and the podcast before this, we did 100 episodes. So it just takes consistency and it takes effort, energy, and time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's great advice, and it's not something that's easy. It's something that you do if it feeds your spirit, really.
Yeah, most definitely. And ultimately, if you're having fun and you're enjoying it, then that's really all that matters. Because like I've been doing this podcast for 3.5 years and like we haven't blown up, we haven't gone viral, we don't have thousands of followers, but we're putting in the time and energy, because ultimately like people see. Like I was listening to Shannon Sharp's podcast recently, Club Shay Shay, and he was interviewing comedian Matt Rife. And Matt Rife, he's really blown up over the last couple of years, but people don't account for the 10 years that he put into it before he blew up. A lot of people see someone and they're like, oh, they're an overnight success. They just blew up because of whatever.
It's 10 years.
But it was 10 years that led to that. And it was the time, energy, preparation, and just grinding. And like I'm still in the phase where I'm grinding and I haven't necessarily reaped the rewards when it comes to financially or getting to cover the Kings professionally, Sacramento Kings, not the Los Angeles Kings, because I'm not really into hockey. But yeah, like I'm still in the phase of grinding, whether if it be in my career or with the podcast with my friends. And it just takes a lot of time and energy. And oftentimes you're not going to see like what you're striving for immediately, and it's going to take years. And so it really just takes commitment. But ultimately, if you're still having fun doing it and you enjoy doing it, like I get to talk sports, college and professional with my friends every single week on a public platform. And so it's fun for me and I enjoy it. And ultimately, I started doing it because I still have goals and dreams of whether if I'm working at a newspaper or I'm working at a sports radio station, because the time and energy I'm putting into being the host of this podcast and also being the producer behind the scenes, running things on StreamYard, whether if it be graphics or sounds, whatever, or bringing someone on the screen, I'm getting the experience. So if an opportunity like that ever came up, I'm ready for it. And it's not just, I think I'm ready for it. You get thrown into the fire and then you fail. I know if an opportunity like that comes, that I will be ready for it. And it's because it's been years of time that I've been putting into it to try and hone my craft and really try to go from being an amateur to a professional.
I agree. I have the same philosophy. That's awesome. Well, I will wrap up and say thank you so much for coming and being part of the Alumni Spotlight series.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm grateful to be here. It was nostalgic for me to be here. And like I said at the top, it's almost like closure for me getting to come back in here to the KSSU studio, because I remember like sports shut down on March 11th, 2020. Like we just hit the 6-year anniversary of that. I was at the Sacramento Kings game that ultimately didn't happen. And I did my last KSSU show on like it was like March 5th or 6th or whatever, like a week before, because I was supposed to be doing my show that week, but then everything shut down. And so it's just been really cool to be back here. When you reached out to me via email, and there was the option of, okay, we can do it over Zoom, we could do it over the phone, or you could come in the studio. It's like, I'm going to take the time out to come into the studio, because just coming back here is nostalgia, but it's also closure. And so thank you for having me. Thank you for the invite. I really appreciate it. And I'm grateful to be here. Keep doing the great work that you guys are.
Absolutely, of course. All right.